Sir, this is incredible. It's a complete metabolic transformation. How did it happen?
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My voice is a little bit croaky after a gig last night, but it should be fine. Anyway, nice to be gigging again. This is the second video in the February Fantasy Stories challenge. So I'll put a description that includes all the people that are hosting it. There's tons and tons of booktubers hosting it. So again, like I said in the first video, thank you to those guys for bringing it up and for inviting lots of people to join in. It's been fun. And it's been 4 prompts. First prompt was to read a classic fantasy book, so something from the 60s or before. Second prompt was to read a sword and sorcery book. The third prompt was to read an urban fantasy, dark fantasy. So it doesn't have to be grimdark, it could be just a dark themed fantasy. And then the fourth prompt was urban fantasy, some kind of urban setting in the book or story you're going to read. So I've already done one video where I talked about The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle and Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. So have a look at that if you're curious about those books. And I also in that video talked about another book that I read, which was my first Brandon Sanderson book, which was The Final Empire. So that was fantastic reading that, and I can't wait to read more of his stuff because I thought it was brilliant. But there is a video more already up about those 3 books. But this is like the second part of that, which is the other 2 prompts. And like in the first video, I'm going to talk about a third book that is related, but not officially part of the challenge. This doesn't relate to the prompts. But I've thought I'd end February with another book, another fantasy book. So it's been quite nice because I've been trying to read more fantasy this year anyway, fantasy and horror. I've read tons and tons of science fiction over the years, and I'm trying to read sort of translated works around classic works as well. So there's lots on my TBR, lots that I want to read, but more fantasy was part of it because I read a lot of fantasy when I was younger, and I've become out of touch with the new authors and things like that. So that was my plan, which is nice because it's February. To be fair, it wasn't necessarily epic fantasy or anything like that I've been chosen for these prompts, but it's still nice to have being involved in this challenge. So what did I read for these last 2 prompts? So the dark fantasy, I chose Metamorphosis by Kafka. So I've already read The Trial, and that was a phenomenal story. That was amazing, and kind of makes sense that the next thing I would read is Metamorphosis. It's a short story, so there's lots of other stories in this book, so I will get to those. But I didn't read the whole book for the challenge, but I would like the other thing I'm going to mention as well. I'm going to sort of use the opportunity to read the rest of the book as I go along. But for this month, I made sure I read this story, and I had read The Trial. And the story, this is a very famous and influential story about a man who wakes up and inexplicably he's become a bug, and it's really about the way his work. He works at a bank, and his manager comes down to sort of help him out, or try to help him out, or get him to work, and his family, how they, mostly his family, how they react to his situation, and the fact that he becomes pretty much immobile and difficult. He can't fend for himself. And it's how the people around him react. And it's a fascinating story. It's obviously very influential, and it's been studied lots of times by different scholars, and there's lots of different interpretations of it. But it was really fun thing to read. It's very well written. It's very easy to read, and there's lots of layers to it. But it's written kind of plainly as well, like very sort of conversationally, if you like, almost. And like there's not like lots of poetic prose or whatever, so I think that makes it easy to read. But there's the kind of subtext is all over the place. There's loads and loads of subtext, which is really interesting. So you can read it again and probably have a different focus, different character. You might be thinking about the sister character, and one time you read it, you might be thinking about his relationship with his father, because his father in it is the first one to kind of dismiss him and reject him, and his relationship with his mother. and you know, there's lots of ways to read the story, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, Metamorphosis, definitely worth reading, and it was amazing. I preferred the trial. I thought the trial was absolutely incredible and quite unique. I mean, this was kind of unique at the time, obviously, but the trial was just really powerful as well, and there's so much in it about how trapped we are, how there's sort of like an existential choice is pointless kind of feeling with the trial, and that sort of powerlessness that the ordinary person feels in life. I mean, what's happening at the minute around the world is horrific, and you do get that feeling sometimes of powerlessness, that what can you do? And the trial is a very good piece of literature that explores that. So yeah, Kafka, clearly a very interesting writer, and certainly someone I want to read more of. But once I've read this book and the book that contains the trial as well, I'll obviously have quite a lot of Kafka under my belt. But yeah, that was really good. And then for the fourth prompt, I went with like an urban fantasy, and I found it difficult to find urban fantasy that wasn't part of a big series of books and was in the word count. But I did choose a Stephen King story called The Sundog, and it's about a boy who gets a camera for his birthday, and that camera is a very strange kind of paranormal camera that keeps taking the same pictures or very similar pictures with slight changes that are not what he's looking at. And this sort of savage dog that's in these photos, and he doesn't understand what it's about, and then it kind of develops, and there's three main characters that are in the story, and their attitudes to those pictures are what the story's about. And it's brilliant. I mean, it's obviously brilliantly written, Stephen King, but I think it's a really good story and really good example of his sort of gentle horror. And the ending's brilliant, and yeah, it was a really good book. So sorry, a really good story. So this is the first story I've read in this book, 4 Past Midnight, and I've heard sort of varying sort of things about the other stories. I did hear good stuff about the Sundog before I'd read it, before I'd chosen it. So I was kind of thinking it was going to be good, but I'm going to finish this book as well so that I can add to my knowledge of what Stephen King's written. And I am slowly building up to another Stephen King video. There is a Stephen King video of my first 10 recommendations already on the channel. But yeah, The Sundog was a really nice story that I really enjoyed, and I thought it was really good, very good, typical. It's very typical of his good stuff, I think. So we'll see what the rest of the book's like. But The Sundog's really good. If you've read that, then comment below, please. And then I've finished off the month with another fantasy book, but it's not part of the challenge. I think it does. No, it's over the word count as well, which is, it couldn't have been with the challenge. But this is actually something that I'm also reading in response to Crimnolly's, hello Ollie, his birth year tag, when he said he wants an extra challenge in it where you're going to read something from either when you were born or when you're 18. So this came out when I was 18, and this is Terry Pratchett's Guards. So this is the 7th Discworld novel that I've read. Once I've read it, I've basically got a little way to go. I should finish it tonight. And also, I'd say it's probably, judging from what's said on BookTube about Pratchett, I think it's definitely, if not the most popular one, it's definitely one of the top sort of 3 most popular ones. Up to this point, Mort is still my favourite, but yeah, it's brilliant. It's really, really good. It's really funny. It's very satirical, lots of social commentary on it, but it's just really funny, and I'm really enjoying reading it. So it was really nice to read this. I think the weakest one out of the ones I've read is actually Sorcery. So I don't know if you guys have read that and want to comment on Sorcery, but I found that a little bit hard going. It wasn't bad. I'm hoping I won't read a bad Discworld book, but it just wasn't quite as fast-paced, funny, interesting as the others. And I like Rincewind as a character, who's the main character in Sorcery, but I think he fares better in the other books I've read about him, or that he features But this is really good. Guards. Definitely, I can see why everyone loves it. And it was having me laughing out loud. And if I wasn't laughing out loud, I was smiling all the way through it. So yeah, Guards is what I'm finishing the month with, which is a fantasy book, but it's not part of the official challenge. So it'd be nice if I get to, I mean, I own about 25 Discworld books, and I've obviously got a way to go because that's my 7th book. But the first 4 I read when I was a lot younger, so I might reread those ones again. I don't know. But I would like to do a Discworld video at some point, but I'll need to read more of them, I think, before I do something useful that is worth watching. But in the meantime, that's my response to February Fantasy Stories. I really enjoyed it. Also involved next month with the March Mystery Madness, which I will start as soon as I've finished Guards. And there's other couple of things I'm bubbling under as well that I'm reading, which will pop up in the videos soon. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I've now reached 300 subscribers, which is lovely. So again, thank you for letting that happen. Sort of slowly creeping up. And it's nice because it means that I'm not just talking to myself, in which case I'd probably stop doing this because it would be silly. I could just do that in front of a mirror. So yeah, it is appreciated. And yeah, have a lovely week, and see you later. Bye.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to be you. Sit up on your high chair on the outside.